Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Does your warehouse waste time and money managing forklift batteries? EnerSys can energize your operations with a customized solution, delivering the power you need while minimizing ownership costs. EnerSys starts by analyzing your operations and then selecting from their comprehensive range of battery and charger technologies, develops a truly optimized system tailored to your needs. EnerSys gives you the power to increase productivity and profitability. See how EnerSys puts power in motion for you at enersys.com. With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Businesses are retooling fulfillment operations, from warehouses to omnichannel, to meet new demand amid unprecedented labor shortages. 3PLs, retailers, B2B distributors, and others are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems to adapt and scale. 6 River Systems Fulfillment Execution System is an integrated solution that combines intelligent, cloud-based software and automation, including its autonomous mobile robot, AMR, Chuck. No costly or disruptive infrastructure changes, fast and easy associate training, and integrations with other warehouse execution solutions allow operations to meet labor challenges, increase efficiency, and enhance customer engagement. Go to www.6river.com to learn more. Go to www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. In today's episode, I am going to be joined by Jonathan Porter, who is the founder at PorterLogic. And PorterLogic is helping companies to better navigate their software systems and the systems that they're utilizing and better put them together so that they work well and you're really getting what you're expecting to get out of them. So Jonathan's going to talk to us a little further about that and kind of how PorterLogic came to be, as well as why we have issues in the first place with systems coming straight out of the box. So Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing really well. Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate to be here.
Definitely happy to have you on. Happy to connect with you. I think we connected through a connection of a connection of a connection or something like that. So it's good to definitely sitting down and having this discussion with you. So tell us a little bit, I guess, first before we get into PorterLogic and how you ended up founding this company that you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about kind of your background and how you got into the supply chain distribution space.
Yeah, so I kind of started my supply chain journey at Georgia Tech. I studied industrial engineering, and that program has a definitely supply chain focus on it. So Coming out of that, though, I went to Manhattan Associates for the first couple years of my career, and that's kind of really what led me down the path of both supply chain and then software specifically. So I spent time implementing their warehouse management technology. And then from there, I did a couple of different companies, but one was a startup, one was kind of a third-party consulting firm, so all focused in the supply chain and business intelligence space. So I really kind of got a few different angles on the industry, got to be at a big established firm and then see some other smaller firms as well. So I've come from an extremely entrepreneurial background, though. I mean, both my parents are entrepreneurs. My grandparents were, had their own businesses.
Yeah.
I had a side business throughout high school and college, and so I kind of always knew that I would do something on my own. So I exited my last consulting role towards the end of 2019, started really looking for what did I want to do next, and that's when I said it was time to start my own company. So I actually started a first company that does custom software development, which that's still up and running. But about towards the end of 2020, I start saying November of 2020 is when I really started focusing more full-time on what would become PorterLogic.
Interesting. And I'm curious, before we get into PorterLogic, you mentioned there kind of seeing the differences between a large company like Manhattan itself and then like a smaller company like the startups that you mentioned. So talk to us a little bit about some of the, I guess, the differences and the contrast there, not only from, I guess, your perspective of being employed by them, but also the perspective of maybe the customers. Like, what would be the difference for them from, working from a giant like Manhattan to, someone smaller that's coming out with something newer and a little bit different?
Yeah, interesting question. I think that there's absolute differences, and it obviously depends on, what what really floats your boat in a way of what you are looking for out of a company. But yeah, from a customer perspective specifically, I think that smaller companies can give a more, call it tailored or hands-on approach, a little bit more of maybe that white glove servicing. They are going to more often than not want to understand your business and your problems more specifically. Now, that's not to say that larger companies, like Manhattan or others, don't have that as well. They absolutely do. But I think that's probably one of the things I've seen personally just at smaller companies compared to larger is that, especially even, talking from an early startup perspective, right? Like if you're one of the initial companies that a startup is working with, they are extremely motivated to make you successful. And so they're going to, go above and beyond to make sure that, things are set up, the way they need to be and that you're getting the support you need. And so from that perspective, a lot of people sometimes can be hesitant to work with newer companies. There's other risks involved. I mean, absolutely. But at the same time, getting more of a specific solution to your problem, I think is something that smaller companies can sometimes offer better than the larger ones.
Yeah, interesting perspective. And I always like to kind of hear people's experiences between, working with, some of the larger companies versus, smaller companies, kind of the upstarts and those that are trying to, kind of make their name in the industry in a sense. Like you mentioned there, you might get a little more love because, we want this thing to succeed, right? Because this is like, sure, maybe the next step for us as a company. So very interesting perspective there. So now, along the way, I mean, you were involved in some consulting, you mentioned there, and then some software development. So obviously, you mentioned there that, being an entrepreneur is in your blood, basically, right? So obvious that you weren't going to be, continue to work for somebody. So you saw some kind of problem which led you to PorterLogic. So talk to us a little bit about what the problem was that you saw in your experiences, and then how that kind of led to PorterLogic and what PorterLogic really is.
Yeah, so perfect segue, because when I first got started out, really, I just started talking to people. Really, before the problem or before anything really had come about, I made the decision pretty early on that I wanted to do a product-based company. So a services-based company just doesn't play as much to my strong suits. I did some personal deep dives and a SWOT analysis and kind of came out of that and said, okay, my strengths are more on the product side. So knowing I wanted to do a product, I started brainstorming really, and I knew I wanted to do supply chain, but I tried to really go into a lot of just conversations open-ended. And I started talking to basically everyone from my network or anyone that would take my call, basically, and asked them very open-ended questions and just said, what are some of the challenges you see in supply chain? What are some of the problems you're facing with supply chain software? And I took meticulous notes and tracked all of my conversations so that I could start recognizing patterns. And really, a lot of folks started talking about this problem of customized systems and integrations. Those were the top two that stood out. More than 60% of the people I talked to talked about those challenges. So that's really what led me to start looking at this area more and really then start saying the next question is, okay, can there be a technology solution to this problem, right? Is there a product that could be built that could solve that? So that's really where then I took kind of the first half of, call it 2021 or so, built a prototype, started doing some iterative product development, MVP kind of style, so minimum viable product, doing a lot of just testing with potential customers. So I started demoing the product well before it fully worked. I just started showing people and trying to get feedback on it. And that iterative process really led to this solution that helps companies align systems and operations. So I think a lot of folks that work in supply chain are aware that, but maybe others aren't, that most supply chain systems are heavily customized to a particular company's needs. So every company has a very unique way of operating, even if it's down to just how they package a box, right? If they're, say they're a subscription box, right, and they're putting a bunch of stuff together in a kit or something like that, those types of unique processes can sometimes fall outside of what an out-of-the-box solution offers. And the general way that's solved is through customizing. So actually writing custom code on top of an existing system to make that specific process work. And that is, it's just a very inefficient way to solve that problem. It's difficult to design and develop an effective solution. Then you have the maintenance side of it, especially if you're a shipping and distribution company, or if you're a retailer, I mean, your core competencies are generally not in software and IT. So, who's going to be maintaining this solution as you go forward? So there's all these challenges there. The alternative really, though, is manual processes. So manual workarounds. I mean, I think that workarounds in the warehousing setting are abundant, right? Excel-based processes, all kind of things that. But really, that is the only other option. If your system doesn't do it, you have to figure out some kind of manual way to make it work. So we've introduced kind of a middle alternative to that, really. So it's a system. It's something that you layer on top of your existing systems. This is not custom code. This is not, custom development. We're able to natively integrate with all the systems that you're already using in whatever format that is, whether that's APIs, but we also do files and database connections and FTP. I mean, kind of all these different ways we can connect. And then it's a low-code visual configuration-based system that lets you build workflows to create processes, basically. So we call it a logic engine because really what it is at its core, once you're kind of integrated in to the existing infrastructure, then you can start building those custom processes. But now it's just dragging and dropping blocks around. And you can build user interfaces, automations, integrations, kind of whatever that is, and it's all this visual format. And it opens up the possibilities for custom functionality, but we do it without that traditional custom software development, which again is just kind of not the right tool kind of to solve this problem, is maybe the way to say it. Right.
It was very, very interesting. And so, I mean, I think you called it a logic engine? I
call it a logic engine, yeah. So for a very long time, I struggled with, like, what is this, right? I mean, it's not a WMS, it's not a TMS, but so we kind of started saying logic engine. Rules engine is a very kind of common colloquial term that a lot of people will use to refer to this a similar type of system, but we're not rule based, we're workflow based. We're much more flexible than that. So that's where we came up with logic engine.
Okay, all right. So is it? Because I was going to say, is it before you said logic engine? I was like, is it similar to like a warehouse execution system in that regard, or is it a little different?
Yeah, it can perform similar functions to that, perhaps, but it really is this more abstract, technology layer. And often one of the ways that I communicate it is by giving examples. So we're implementing a direct-to-consumer e-commerce retailer right now that has 10 different warehousing partners, and they were previously manually pulling all of their inventory data. So they were going out and pulling Excel reports to gather what inventory they had at all these different warehouses. So our technology is able to come in and connect to all of those partners to automate the pulling of that data and then present it to them in a kind of unified fashion. But we're able to, some of those connections are through APIs, some are actually through data ingested from Excel. So we're getting automated Excel reports. We're getting data from Dropbox as well. So kind of like we're able to go in and, as I mentioned earlier, whatever way your systems or whatever way the data is, we can pull that in. And then we're building user interfaces and call it dashboards on top of that. But it's more than dashboards. I mean, we have some pretty complicated screens that we can build. So these are really not just visual screens. These are inputs and grids and editable grids and kind of all the different components that you would expect in real custom software is able to be built in our tool. And screens are also all drag and drop, low code. So really the idea is this is a holistic system that has all these different pieces, all these different tools that you need to really replicate custom functionality, but just making it far simpler exposing it to a wider audience than just software developers.
Very interesting. And I think, it's interesting there. We talk a little bit about the problem that you're seeing and kind of what was going on there and how you came up with the solution. And the example you just mentioned, I think a lot of companies are going through this certainly now as, you're looking to expand and demand has increased so much over like the last 2-3 years. And companies are trying to figure out, how do they meet the customer demand and keep service levels high and be able to deliver to the customer faster. And you mentioned this example where there's 10 different shipping partners and you're getting data in a bunch of different ways. So talk to us a little bit about, so people can kind of understand, I guess, the benefits and the value of this. This company that you use as an example, or maybe you have another example that we could relate to too. But, when you look at getting inventory records from 10 different shipping partners in 10 different ways, talk to us a little bit about, some of the inefficiencies that's causing, and then being able to bring them into a uniform type of method, how that's going to increase their efficiency and help them better operate.
Yeah, great question. I think that the primary value that we often drive for companies is just an improvement in that efficiency. So we're eliminating manual processes is one of the main ways that we're able to kind of alleviate team members' time. So I think that often these are processes that are being done manually right now, right? And oftentimes too, it's things that maybe they work for a company for a long time, right? When you're just starting out, especially, or when you're a smaller company, sometimes Excel really is the best solution, or a manual process is the best solution to start off with. Yeah. The challenge often becomes either when you're scaling really fast, or to your point of, market conditions are changing. We've obviously seen a tumultuous couple of years, and so markets are changing all the time. That's when sometimes the processes that you're doing no longer work or don't work again at that level of scale. So introducing our solution, we're able to gain those team members' hours back by they're not having to do those manual tasks anymore. We also just we eliminate a lot of risk in a supply chain as well. So whether it's human errors or even if it's just, convoluted systems that have kind of been hacked together and, are hard to support and difficult to maintain. So I've seen, especially throughout my career, a number of times when customers are, kind of building solutions on their own in a way. But especially if you think about it in a warehousing setting, a WMS being down for an hour can be detrimental to a company's operations, right?
It's put you behind like 2 days. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So, just even, if a system that you're having to maintain and every extra 30 minutes of trying to debug a problem can really matter, right? So those are the types of things that if instead of kind of hacking together this solution on your own, you've layered in PorterLogic and you now have these visual workflows to understand exactly what your systems are doing, especially when you think about its gaps between systems, that's often the biggest black box, and there's where our technology comes in. We're not trying to replace your WMS, we're not trying to replace your TMS or anything like that, right? We're coming in the middle, and those are often the areas that are the most challenging to figure out when things are going wrong. So having that single place, again, it's not 5 different systems that you put together to make all this work. One place, you can get a really good sense of what's happening, where your data is moving, what processes are being executed. So kind of all of that drives efficiencies and value to customers, both on kind of that direct operation side, but then more of those indirect, support activities as well.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think it's a great point there about, the loss of time in trying to fix an issue potentially. And, it seems, I guess, like, to someone that's not involved in the industry, an hour is like, what's an hour, right? And, it's like, a sales guy or something, he's like, I got stuck in traffic for, half an hour, slowed down my day, no big deal, right? Sure. But the warehouse, you're down for an hour, it could be like catastrophic in a sense for your day, if not the next day as well. So, absolutely, being able to more easily get through issues and understand the workflows, like you mentioned, I think is a huge thing. So you mentioned a couple times this sort of drag and drop kind of interface. So when we look at some of the growth that we've seen over the last couple of years, which we touched on a little bit, but I think everybody is well aware, of what's happened over the past couple of years. But a lot of the growth that is kind of hitting some companies hard is like the smaller, medium-sized businesses, right? And they're trying to keep up and figure out, how do they kind of match this demand that maybe they weren't expecting just so soon in their lifetime or their company's life expectancy or whatever the case may be. But, how simple is it to use this drag and drop? Because if we look at a small to medium sized business, they probably don't have a huge resource for IT, right? Or maybe some of them are even trying to, figure it out themselves. So is it to the point where, someone who's maybe not like a trained IT person or, is heavily involved in IT can manage and take care of?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It is, and really where I would go with that is that it's actually kind of the best of both worlds, because we're designed such that customers can edit and maintain their workflows on their own.
Okay.
Everything from, actual workflow logic to the screens and the user interfaces are things that they can definitely edit themselves. Our team, though, is also here to build these workflows and kind of help you get started on the platform. We also have consulting partners that we work with to as well kind of help with that implementation and onboarding process.
Okay.
A lot of what we've found is that when we first come into a customer, we're probably building a good portion of that initial setup just because it's much faster that way. We can kind of get you up to speed in, a couple of weeks or months, really. You have to put that into a bit of context because, most WMS or ERP implementations are 18, 24-month projects. So being able to say that we can be live in 2 to 3 months is significantly improved to a lot of supply chain systems. So, but then having that, low code drag and drop kind of editability, it does allow customers to then maintain it on their own after we're, kind of moved back from the implementation. So we're obviously always there to assist, but at the same time, like oftentimes we're finding customers would much rather make some of these smaller changes on their own, so they're not having to involve us. They can do that faster, if they can just, make changes right there as things are needed. Because often we're talking, maybe they want to show a new field on a screen, or maybe they need to, update the way that this particular piece of data is getting sent to another system, or, it's those types of things that once we have the initial build out done, customers can maintain on their own. But no, and it's really is designed though with users more in mind. I mean, I think that's one of my kind of founding philosophies in a way, is that code is complicated and the syntax specifically is really heavy and tedious, and that's what gets in the way a lot of times of building these customized systems, is the fact that you have to know how to code. And so there's where I actually try and avoid the word low code a lot of times, because that's gotten so buzzwordy, and there's so many companies that will talk to you about low code, right? But there is really a lot of power in making that simpler. Not maybe necessarily for this quote-unquote citizen developer that everybody talks about. I think that is also a bit of a misnomer and a bit of a buzzword these days. But making it faster and easier, whether you're somebody that understands software design or whether you're not, has a tremendous amount of value. I mean, most of the time when we're talking customizing a WMS, those are 6-month types of projects in and of themselves, because you have to have somebody designing it, then you have to send it somewhere else to get it coded, then you have to send it somewhere else to get it tested. So even if you are involving consulting partners, say, that are doing the configuration of the system and doing the setup, it's faster for them, so it's faster for you. We get a better solution in the end. There's not that 6 month downtime between design and delivery. I mean, that's one of the things we're able to almost design in real time. So instead of throwing something up on a whiteboard and talking about it, you can actually just build it kind of as you go, see the software immediately, and start clicking around and trying to, does this work or not? There's no way to replicate seeing a screen and clicking around on it. You can't replicate that with designing on paper, right? I mean, you'll never get to the same solution. So all of these are ways that we're able to achieve better solutions in the end, solve the problems of our customers more directly, and we're able to do it faster, which as a result, obviously, usually results in a lower price point for customers too than compared to a traditional method. So all of these things are as a result of the fact that we're this visual-based system that can do things kind of faster than the traditional method.
Very interesting, and I think it's a huge improvement because the point that you made there, kind of at the end, is you can throw this stuff up on a whiteboard, but then it could take a week, 2 weeks, maybe longer to see it actually fleshed out and what it would actually look like, and then by that time you kind of you lose where your head was at in that moment, and then it doesn't really work, and then it's it's literally back to the drawing board in a sense, right?
There you go.
Yeah, so being able to do that, I think you really have an interesting value proposition there. I mean, it certainly makes it easier for people to understand it, and being able to obviously implement in just a couple months versus a year and a half to 2 years is a huge thing. So we talk about the year and a half to a 2 year type of deal to implement like a traditional WMS, and we mentioned customizing is almost like a necessity in a sense for companies, and obviously you've had some experience in the WMS world, and why do you think that we are in this space where a WMS or a system that we're going to utilize for our warehousing or distribution or supply chain is not something that can just work out of the box? Why is it that we can't have a system and like Microsoft Office? Why can't we not just download it and here we go, let's start shipping? Why do you think that is?
So a couple of thoughts there. I think at its core, it definitely comes down to the unique ways in which companies operate. And really more specifically, what I mean by that is think about how many companies these days use their supply chain as a competitive advantage. Right? Whether it's the way you ship or the delivery experience with your customers, it really is a competitive advantage over other folks in your space. And you, by that inherent nature, you can't be doing things that other people are doing, right? You are doing things differently, and every company has those unique processes throughout. I mean, even if it's just down to how you receive boxes in or how you put away, or think about a food use case where you have food regulations around how things are stored and temperature zones and how orders come together. There's an inherent level of just difference around the way that every company, and specifically when you talk about warehousing, the way that they all operate. And so if you're developing a package solution, frankly, the best way to handle that is to just say, okay, well, here's 80 to 90% of what the market's going to need. We're going to build a certain level of configurability into that system, but they know that there's going to be that extra 10 or 20% that's just not covered. And frankly, that is the most optimal way for them, because to get that last 10% into a package system, it is extremely difficult and tedious, and it's not going to be profitable on any side. So that's why we actually work really, we have a lot of synergies with those existing systems, because there are kind of base functionality that everybody needs. I mean, you're talking about order processing and allocation and receiving, and I mean, there are some of those basic things. Or even if you're just talking about more of an inventory use case and you're talking about tracking pallets and keeping up with quantities, and so there's some inherent things everyone needs. It's just kind of those unique processes on top of that maybe aren't what a system out of the box has. But The other thought in this vein, and that what makes supply chain so different, is that those unique pieces are often not movable, right? Like these aren't just business processes that you can maybe change how something works or change the order of approvals in this, just kind of operational process. These are food requirements. These are, safety requirements. These are kind of hard set in the ground things. And so that's where this option of either customizing or manual workarounds comes, because you can't change that requirement often. So I would maybe contrast it to, say, I don't know, accounting systems, right? Where you have there's GAAP standards and there's standard processes around, what kind of documents you need to produce, P&L statements and balance sheets and things like that. So those are kind of, you can build that. And I'm sure somebody's going to come in and say, well, there's unique processes in accounting too. Just using it as an example, right? But it's really especially apparent in supply chain and warehousing in particular.
Yeah, very interesting points there. And it's, I think as you mentioned, that some companies their supply chain is their competitive advantage, which can be, because of some of their uniqueness that you mentioned right in there. So I think it's pretty interesting, to kind of get that perspective and see, what the reality is in a sense of, what are we looking at when we're looking to, invest in a new system or something of that nature. It's not just something that, we're going to just take off the shelf and use it like that. We're going to have to adjust in some way. And I think that, PorterLogic seems to be, helping with that and helping to ensure that, all the systems and all the data that you have flowing in is going to be effective in the sense that you want it to be, and not only just effective and successful in terms of putting it in place, but also digestible, I think, for the operators, digestible for those who are utilizing the system, and those who want to maybe get a little deeper and manage some of the workflows and be able to adjust them, without having to, fully get that IT support that they might have to get otherwise. As you mentioned, someone who knows how to code, or maybe there's not even someone on staff that knows how to code, which I've been in that situation before. It's a little frustrating, and you have to get outside help to now help you do that and fix that. So it's a savings on that sense as well. So it's very interesting what you guys are doing, and love to see it and be able to, see how it develops and how people start to adopt it, and really how it kind of maybe changes the landscape a little bit of how we look at these systems, and really, the expectations that we as the solution users are putting on other system providers, and just creating that more ease of use. And I think it echoes in a sense too, I guess, what we expect in our normal consumer lives is, we expect things to be easy to use. You mentioned drag and drop, and people are familiar with that. I want to rearrange the apps on my phone, I drag and drop them, right? So, why can't we not just do that in our work worlds as well too? So very interesting stuff from you, Jonathan, and really enjoyed hearing about PorterLogic and kind of, how you're solving these issues that we see in the WMS world, and really looking forward to seeing how PorterLogic continues to grow. If people are interested in learning more about PorterLogic, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can visit our website, PorterLogic.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well, so you can find me there, either under my personal page or the company page. I love to talk to people about this. I'm a huge supply chain nerd, so I'm a huge technology person as well. So I'll sit there and talk with you about business, or get down in the weeds with you about code. So yeah, would love to hear from anybody.
All right, great. And we'll put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well. So Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.